Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another live stream here on Free Will Photos. Today, we are going to be doing something that I do near the end of the year, which is reviewing old photos. Now, we're going back, it looks like 2015 for some of these, and some of these may even be further back than 2015. But the goal with this drill is, uh, sorry, excuse me. The goal with this drill is really just to get used to looking at old work to see the progression. Now, I'm not going to talk to you too much about the progression of my photography. What I really want to do is show you how you can go back and look at an old photo and re-edit as you learn new techniques. And that's really what I want to show you today, because I have a few HDR images, and then I have portraits of my family, because if you've been watching the channel for a little while, you know that I picked up the camera specifically to capture photos of my children and my family. So there's going to be a lot of those images, but we're not going to get through all of them. You'll see the album that I made that I'm using for today's lesson. Now, if you got questions, like always, drop them in the comment section. I do get to the comments, and I think that goes without being said anymore. You know, if you leave a comment on any of my videos, I do get back to you. And then, of course, you can always shoot me an email. Check the description box below for that as well. And if you want to sign up for the newsletter to get some free presets for ON1 Photo Raw, check the description box below as well. And you can come over to the website, make a free account, and get all of the additional presets that I offer, as well as some work kits. If you go to freewillphotos.com, become a member, and then go to free downloads, and you'll have the information. So let's go ahead and jump into the computer. Yeah, we'll go this view. All right. So here are the images that we're going to be looking at today. And it was this image right here that was a thumbnail. So we'll go ahead and start with this image. Now, as you can see, I took pretty much all of these were taken with the Nikon D5200. The only one that I did not use the D5200 on was this one up here. I actually used a Samsung point and shoot. This photo, I want to say it's in 2008. I was just like, I've always been fascinated with photography, so I bought a point and shoot, and I started messing around. Thought it would be cool to get this sunset, and that's what I got. So let's go ahead and jump into this first image. Once ON1 decides to pull up the image. I don't know why ON1 is moving so slow. I have plenty of resources on the computer, so that doesn't make sense to me. And this is an older RAW file, so no need for that. All right, so the first thing that I like to look at in old photos is what settings I use, because I may not always remember, and that does matter a little bit. I was at a fairly low ISO, so I'm not going to worry about any noise when I start to pull up on the shadow detail here. If I do, then I'll come back and edit out some of that noise, probably locally, maybe globally, we'll see. Now, if I'm using a RAW photo, which I do have a JPEG in here, as you've seen, I like to look at the camera profiles. Now, not always will I changed the camera profile, but the camera profiles really do matter, right? Because this is where you get that base that you're working off of. I recommend you change the camera profile before you start your edits. But, if you feel as though you just need to jump right into the edits, go for it. It's your post-production workflow. This is just where I like to start off. So since this is a portrait, I think I'm going to go with portrait, because this makes their skin look a little too orangish for me. And this is more contrast than I would like to have in the image right now. I'm going for like a timeless feel, right? So not as much contrast. Now I'm going to hit AI auto just to see what ON1 thinks should happen here. And it makes their skin orange again. If this happens, and this happens primarily with black people's skin or African American skin that has more melanin than other skins. When you start to make your edits, the colors start to shift, and it puts like more emphasis on the red because it's trying to compensate for the lack of melanin in the skin tone that ON1 has built in. So what I do is either pull down on the temperature, and you see that kind of starts to fix that problem. The other thing that you can do is just pull back on your vibrance, and that fixes the problem a lot better. So now I'm getting some natural tones to the skin tones here. All right. And I think I'm okay with the overall adjustment that happened with the AI auto. The one thing that I may make some changes to is probably in my highlights. I think those can come down just a little bit more. And then I'll open up the midtones. And for me, that's just balancing out a lot of the light that is hitting my kids. And maybe I'll hold down J key. Yeah, see, I'm still blowing out. And I'll fix that later for the print. I'll show you the technique that I use to fix that. But to get a little bit more contrast in there without having to touch the contrast slider, I'm just going to pull down on the black. And I think that's all I need to do. We'll mess around with haze. And a lot of what I do whenever I'm working with any image for that matter is I like to experiment. I mean, it's non-destructive. Why not give it a shot, right? I could turn this into like a high key black and white if I wanted to, but I don't think I will. I think I'm gonna leave it be. Now, if you want to know what I mean by high key black and white, it's just gonna blow out the background, make them a little bit brighter, but overall, we're not gonna do that. So the next thing that I want to do, as you can see, I want to take care of this background and really separate them from the background. So what I'm going to do is hit Effect, hit Add Filter, and I'm going to create a tone enhancer. Now, I'm going to only be looking at the background here when I pull down this exposure. Okay. So probably something like that looks good. Now, I'm going to invert this mask. And then I am going to grab my brush. I'm at an opacity of 100, a flow of 100. And then I'm just going to make my brush pretty large. And there's tons of ways of doing this. I'm just going to brush this in quite crudely. Just to make my selection of the background, making sure that, and yes, I realize I am going over my children on this particular edit, but I'm going to come back and clean that up. I just want to make sure that I have a majority of the background. Now you could do this also by painting away the effect from the kids. So now what I'm going to do is hit Shift X and come back around, and I need to make my feather a lot bigger. So I'm just going to go 100% this time. And this helps me blend it away. Now, I'm not looking for perfection. That's one thing that I've learned about editing photos is perfection. You know, you want to get as good as you can, but being perfect is not necessary. All right. Don't, that's a very obvious edit with the extreme difference of tonal values on my daughter, right? But coming over here and removing, like, I could leave her hand with the adjustment on it if I absolutely had to, right? I don't think anyone would have paid attention to that because what I have found in many photo edits, both for family and clients, is most of the time they don't care. Uh, they are really, as a photographer, one of the things that we're really doing is just capturing the moment. At least for me, it's all about capturing the moment. So it doesn't have to be the best edit. It just has to be a good representation and a memory, I guess, holder. You can hold the memory of the photo, or I'm sorry, of the moment. The photo should represent the moment and not be so much about the edit. Now, there is a time and a place for an artistic approach to an edit. You know, everybody looks at wedding photos and they're like, oh, that's such a beautiful wedding photo. And, is it that they made art on your wedding day that makes it beautiful? Or is it the moment and what you remember about your wedding day? Most people don't really look at the photos and think the photo is great because the photographer did this awesome edit. They look at it because they remember what happened that day. And that's what's important, you know. But I'll get off my soapbox on that. I was just trying to help keep this a little bit more lively as I make this edit, or clean up this edit. But again, you can do this however you would prefer to do it. This is just my method. This is how I like to do it personally. I go over, or I paint in the areas that I want the adjustment to be on. All right. Almost done here. And I'll get our hand. And this is also a really good way to do some makeshift dodging and burning. Probably not the best way of doing it, but absolutely can be done this way. And it gives you the most control to do it this way. So that's something to keep in mind. And I think I'm just going to leave it like that. So let's go ahead and hit the before. We had a darker image and then the after. Now the separation of the kids is a little bit greater. Now, if you've been watching any of my videos, you know I like to feather my selections. And since we were using a nice feather on our brush, likely is going to make these look a little bit better. Now, you notice I'm not using Portrait AI. It's not because I'm against Portrait AI. It's because Portrait AI does not work the best for me. It doesn't provide the same level of portrait editing that I prefer. So what I'm going to do is make my next edit. So this is BG expose. We'll just call it that, right? So that way I know what I'm looking at. So what I want to do now is really style the photo, and this is where I'm going to throw a LUT in there. You can put your LUTs in whenever you want. I am going to go, I think I want to go with, we'll check what's inside of vintage. I like this look just because that's like a real throwback, timeless type look, but I really want something, Yeah, we'll go with simple warm. Now, that's way too much. We'll pull it down. And I think I'm even going to pull it off of their skin a little bit. Now, there's a few ways that you can do this. The first way, you can hit the setting icon and then pull the skin slider. And this is just going to pull the adjustment away from the tonal range of whatever ON1 identifies as like a skin tonal range. Sorry, something got in my eye. Now, I personally, I'm not like crazy over this, and I can probably pull it up a little bit more just to show you what's happening. And it's just like making the photo a little bit more orange. That's all it's adding into the photo. But it's also removing, and for me, it's removing way too much of the effect from the overall photo. Like, it might as well not even be on if I have to do that. So what I prefer to do is open up the mask and then go Shift X to paint out. And I take a low opacity brush, maybe I'll probably go like 13, right? Really, really low. And I just paint it away from the areas that I don't want the effect in. Now, I do this often. We'll come over here, just like so. And then let's hit OC. So I need to paint it away a little bit more. That's not enough. We'll paint it away just a tad bit more. And this is so subtle with the way that it's getting painted out that you won't even realize that it's not actually on their faces, but it's perceived. I know that that sounds counterproductive to what we're trying to do, which is remove it from their face by me saying you won't even realize that it's not on their faces. But the goal here is to create a moment, right? So now the next thing that I want to do is probably, my daughter in the background may need a little bit of sharpening. So one of the ways I've shown this in the past, you can use dynamic contrast. And actually, need to rename that. And what you can do is that's making her look a little bit more clear, like perceivably. I'm going to hit Command I to invert the mask, hit Shift X, and then I'm going to bring my opacity up to 100%, and I'm just going to paint this in over her because I don't need it over the whole thing. I just need to bring back a little bit of sharpness with her, right? Because she's a little bit off of the focal plane, and I was shooting at f5. I was pretty close because I was using my 18 to 55. What was I at? I was at 36 millimeters. But you can tell as if I was at 35 and I wasn't close, there would be way more environment. So you can tell I was pretty close. So food for thought on that. But nonetheless, I just want to make sure that I get her in focus over here, and then I'll increase the small just a little bit. Increase the medium and the large, and then I'm just going to pull this down. Maybe that was too much medium. Maybe too much small, actually. Yeah. And I'll go ahead and make the blacks a little bit blacker. So that way there's like some real contrast going on in there. And I think that is going to do it for that adjustment at least. So Jaden sharpen. We'll just do it like that. All right. So the next thing, there's some stuff on my daughter's face here. So we'll come over to retouch, and I will use the little removing tool. Zoom in just a tad. Make this about the same size as her eye, or as the issue that I'm fixing, and then just click and drag, sample somewhere else. Sometimes it picks the right area, and I only remove things. I think I've said this before, but if I haven't, then let me say it now. I only remove things that would perceivably not be there when they get older, or would not be there when they get older. So like a pimple, there's no need to keep a pimple unless there's a story behind the pimple that you have to keep it in the image. All right. Gentlemen, I will tell you that being a father of two girls, most of the time, pimples are not something that they want to see themselves. Like, it's not flattering to them. So I recommend you get rid of them. But if you're doing this for client work, then you should probably ask the client. And if you're doing it for personal work, then just get rid of them. Like, unless, of course, there's like some super deep story that you just absolutely have to have that. But probably not. So the next thing that I want to do, and I can do this with a local adjustment, is remove some of the highlights in her hair, because that's a really bright spot, and I want the focus to really come here. And we're going to do a vignette eventually, but right now we need to get rid of some of these highlights. So, and I'm going to do this with a fairly low opacity. We'll go 63, about a medium opacity. And just paint in over her hair. It's lowering the exposure. It's also getting rid of some of those highlights. And it's not such a drastic change that it looks unnatural. My goal is not to make the photo look unnatural, right? That just looks like it could be her hair. Now, I will add some structure to it because I think that it can stand for that and remove some of the haze that may help with the separation. You see how that just took away some of the attention from the hair? So this is with the adjustment. This is without the adjustment. It's really bright. It's all over. And then this is without the adjustment. Or, I'm sorry, with the adjustment. It takes away from the attention going to her hair. And now we're going to make the enhancement on the eyes. So we'll call this okay. And now we'll go ahead and make another one, reset this one. And I actually use the preset that comes with ON1 called Magic Eye Fixer. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And I just paint this right over the eye, like so. And it makes the eyes look weird at first, right? And if I have two people in the photo, I like to do two separate adjustments. All right, we'll just bring the opacity down on this to somewhere around here should be good. And then I'll make this okay, and then we'll add another adjustment. And this time we're going to do the Magic Eye Fixer again, but this time we're going to do it for my younger daughter. Okay, and then just bring down that opacity. You want to have different adjustments for each person, because the adjustments that you make, you want to be able to go back and correct them. Now, what I would love for ON1 to do is to create a grouping system. So if I wanted to put all the adjustments for my daughter into one folder, then I can do so. That would be a value added feature to ON1. Also being able to copy or duplicate adjustments. But I digress from that. Okay, so we'll go there. So now it's always good to check your before and after. This is before. The photo was a little dark and the background was over. Now I'm looking at this color palette and I'm not liking it, right? Going from one to the other. So if I turn this off, let's see, I'm not liking that either. So maybe there's just too much of this in the photo. So let's go ahead and pull that down a little bit more because I don't want an orange photo, right? We'll turn it off, turn it back on. And to me, that looks a little bit more natural. Now, one of the things that you can also add in, you got to click up here at the top, is to make, for me, making portraits, adding in a sunshine filter, it just helps. You see how like instantly by adding in the sunshine filter, the photo gets brighter, and that's not exactly what I want. It was a little too strong, but I can warm up the photo or I can cool it down. But for this look, I want it to be a little bit more warm, and I don't need as much of the color. I just want it to be more warm and maybe even add in a slight glow. Now, let me pull this back up just to see. Yeah, that's too much. So we'll pull the glow down. Okay. And we'll turn this off and on. And as you can see, it's not helping as much with the contrast piece. But what I'll do is come over here. I'm going to copy this this adjustment or this mask. And then come over to sunshine, turn it back on, hit paste, and then maybe invert it. Yeah, okay. And then we can feather this even more so it kind of bleeds into the background. But what I'm going to do is pull this down and maybe too much of the saturation was removed. Okay, so now we have what I would consider a good photo from the base image to the finalized image. And then the last thing that I would throw in is a vignette. Now, I personally enjoy using the local adjustments to make my vignettes. And then I'll just hit M for the masking bug, click up here, click on vignette, and then click right there in the middle. This gives me a great starting point for the vignette. I'll drag this out just a touch so that way I can bring both of their faces into the vignette. And all I do from this point is really just drag this out a little bit. And I could probably even bring this in just a touch. Now, that's too much of a vignette that's happening like with the separation going out here. So what I do is I pull this down quite a bit, and then all I do is I hit or I bring my opacity out. And I just mess around with how much I want to spread out that vignette. But the transition, I should say, spread out the transition. But this is a good look. I like the end result of this. Now I'm going to hit the J key to see. Come back to develop. I guess I have solved all of my issues, so I don't have to fix it. Yeah, all of my overexposure issues have been addressed in this image. So just hit done and take us back to the album. So, and next we're going to touch up a HDR image. Now, I will be the first to tell you, not a huge fan of the HDR conversion inside of ON1. I think that it could be better, but we're going to use what we got. So I'm going to select the 3 images here and click on HDR. This is going to bring all those photos together and give me the HDR conversion dialog box. And here it is. Now, this photo comes together quite well. I bracketed this. I want to say it was 1/3 of a stop over and 1/3 of a stop under. That's all I needed to really capture this scene. And I'm just looking to see which image gives me the best starting point. I don't know if I want it to be really dark, which, sorry, which could be good, but I think I like the initial one, so I'm not gonna make too much of a difference on that one. And now we'll look at the camera profiles to see which one. This is a nice one, ON1 neutral. This one is very contrasty and I can dig it. I like contrast. And then linear raw, not gonna mess with. I like what this is doing to the highlights in the water. Don't like that at all. I like how there's a level of saturation. I think I'm gonna go with one of these camera profiles. I think I'll go with Camera Vivid. Yeah. I don't like to do any of my actual adjustments, my exposure adjustments inside of the Create HDR module. Instead, what I'll do is just hit save and work with this like a normal image. Like, to me, this is too small of a preview to see what's actually happening with the dynamic range that I'm supposed to be building in the image. So that's why I personally don't care for it. Now, I understand not everyone is the same way. So if you prefer to make your edits, let me know in the comment box below. Let me know. Or if you even use ON1 to make HDR images. What I want to do is and what I will do, I should say, is a comparison between ON1 HDR conversion and the Nick Collection HDR effects. So stay tuned for that. Now, hopefully this comes along. This is the other reason why I'm not a fan of HDR images in ON1. They seem to, like for me, they seem to just take forever to render. And I'm not sure why. I'm always waiting. And You can see it's done now, but I don't know why it took that long. Because when I used Lightroom, it used to just make it really quick. So that's interesting. All right. So the first thing that I like to do is get my tone, right? And my tone, I'll hit AI Auto for this one just real quick, see what happens. Nothing that I really want. It's way too bright. These rocks in the background I want to bring out, but I love the way that the water was dark, and so that's probably going to be a local adjustment. We'll see what happens. Let's go ahead and just open up shadows, and hopefully it doesn't open up. Yeah, it's opening up way too much in the water for me. So we're just going to do local adjustments because I'm not going to be able to fine tune this the way that I want. So we'll leave that alone, add filter, tone exposure, and we're just going to open up shadows. And this should give us the same response, but for some reason, it's like playing games. That's weird. Okay. Well, let me turn that off for a second. Hit local. Open shadow. And get a big brush here. Let's put the opacity all the way up. All right, yeah. So we'll just do local adjustments. It's all good. All right. So now all of my shadows are opened up with this particular, with the top portion. I could have used a one of the gradient adjustments, but I guess I just was not. I just wanted to see if this was working, and I just kept going with it because this is genuinely how I learned so much about ON1, is just messing around with it to see what I can do. So that adjustment does a whole lot for the image already, right? And then if I wanted to, I could throw in some structure because why not? And maybe not open those rocks so much. And wonder what happens if I add in haze or remove it. Doesn't seem to be doing anything, so we'll reset that. All right. So we'll call this rocks light. Okay. And now I want to really highlight what's happening here in the water. And you know, one of the other things that I think I'll do is make it a black and white image. And see what happens. I'll just brighten it all up and throw in some detail. Yeah, I don't like what it's doing to the water. So we'll come over to our tone enhancer and reset this. Throw in some detail here. Shift X. Shift X. We're going to just paint this away from the water. So that way that detail enhancement is not messing with my silky smooth water. Okay. And then I'll get a smaller brush, or I'm sorry, a lower opacity brush, and we'll go ahead and paint away some of the detail from up there, and from our foreground we'll paint away some of the detail, just a little bit. I'm not painting away a whole lot of it, just enough to like give some I don't know what the word is, but just give it a different look. That's all. All right, so now that we have that going, I want to add in some highlights to the water. So we'll click on local and we'll just hit lighten. And what I'm going to do, this is going to look terrible right now, so just bear with me. All right, I'm going to pull up the opacity to about 80, and I'm just going to paint all the way over the water. All right, it's going to go to all of that. And then what I'm going to do is click on the settings icon, and I'm going to change this to only apply to the highlights. And then I'm going to pull up the range until I see where it's going. And that did not work the way I expected it to. That's embarrassing. Oh well. We'll go to lighten, no, screen. All right. So screen brings some of that back into the water, which is where I really want that to be, right? So if we were to go to all, now the screen doesn't want to work with me. All right, let's do this. Let's reset, and I'll reset this mask as well. Now we'll hit lighten. I am just going to paint this in where I want it to be manually. So low opacity, high feather, or not a low opacity, but less than high. And I'm gonna have to tailor this, but this helps me see where I'm painting. And all I'm trying to do is add some interest into the water. This one, I think I should go with the lower opacity, so we'll bring this down to about 19 and just paint in some light right here. And this is all about reshaping the light in your image, all right? So whenever you get to a point where you're like, you know, I don't know what light I have in the image, you have the light that you have, and you can just reshape that, which is what I'm doing here, or at least trying to do. All right, now I'm just gonna feather that, so that way it goes out pretty good, just like so. Now it looks natural with the image. So if I turn that off and turn it back on, you can see it brings some interest into the water where I want it to be. And then what I'm going to do next is see if there's a blend mode that really brings that out. It's usually one of these lighter blend modes. That is just a little too much. Color dodge doesn't look too bad, but if it's not doing anything, then and then these are all contrast ones, I wouldn't recommend these. So, and then luminosity, probably not. So if anything, it would be lighten, and that helps with, again, just bringing some attention into the water, making it look a little bit more applicable, or appropriate, not applicable. All right. So now it's time to really start working on getting some good contrast in the shadowed areas. But the way that I'm going to do that is actually by using a masking bug. Click on the water, because I want the water to be my focus. And I'm just going to make this a small, and then drag that out a little bit. And now what I'm going to do is hit the gear icon. And I'm going to apply this only to the shadowed areas. You see how that instantly like changes the mood of the image. Now, obviously that is way too much. So what I can do is pull back on the range, and that will start to, this makes a whole different vibe of the photo, right? It just makes a very different vibe. That's the best way that I can say it. And that's how we play around with photo edits. But next thing that I'd like to do is just mix this in the best way that I can get it to mix in. And this is all trial and error, so I think I'll just pull the range back up, let it darken a good portion of the photo, and I'll copy this mask. As soon as it gets done copying, then we're going to paste it to another adjustment. So we'll hit a new adjustment here, and then we are going to paste this adjustment. And if you want to double the effect, this is a good way. But what I'm going to do is invert, and instead of the exposure adjustment, I'm just going to reset that. And I think we will go with a little bit of structure just to bring the eye into the center. And then we'll even brighten the center just a little bit. And this needs to be brought down. And we'll bring the center up just a little bit more in exposure. Bring the whites up maybe. And bring up the structure. So all that's doing is to the center of the photo, opposite of what is happening on the outside or outskirts of the photo, to just, you can't see it, but you can perceive it. And that's the goal. Without it, the photo looks great or good, but with it, the photo really comes to life, and you can see where all of the light is really affecting the image. And then the very last thing that I'll do is a final vignette, and I'm not doing a good job at renaming my layers like I always harp on doing. And this vignette, I like to play around with the rotation of it because I don't like a classical vignette where everything looks the same. So I rotate it, and that helps with reshaping the light. And as you can see, this just brings the center of focus into the image. And for me, I like it. Now, I could probably lighten up some of this over here. So what I'll do is grab the brush tool, make this a little bit larger, and I'm already on a low opacity. I'll just click and paint away some of that. So now it is not as deep of a shadowed area on the lower right hand corner. So this is the before when I made the original HDR conversion, and here is the after with the HDR conversion and turning the photo into a black and white. So let's hit done, and we will go to our final image for today. Once we get there. So if you got questions, you can drop it into the comment section below, because I'm all about answering questions. Your questions help me grow a little bit. So the last image is going to be this sunset image. Now, mind you, this particular image is it's a JPEG, and it was shot on a point and shoot. I don't remember the exact type of point and shoot, and this may have even been a Samsung phone. Now that I think about it, nonetheless, it is some sort of Samsung device, and there's just all kinds of stuff going on. There's color noise, which I'm not gonna try and correct because it's a JPEG, and there's only so much you can do with color noise. Um, and you know what? For the sake of testing, we'll just try no noise on it and see what happens. I know that no noise works well with raw photos, but let's see how well it works on a JPEG that is super old and um, doesn't have much detail to work with, right? It's a fairly decent resolution. And, that actually cleaned up the color noise quite well. So I'm just going to go with the default setting on that. I like what it did. Uh, and now I have a clean image, which I think works well. So what I want to do with this image is really just silhouette the back end here and then enhance the sky. All right. Now, these are things that I believe can be done or achieved well with ON1. So first thing I'm going to do is add a tone enhancer. And I'm going to bring down my blacks, bring down my shadows, and bring down the exposure just a little bit. Now I'm going to grab the masking bug, and I'm going to use linear top. And then I'm going to click right here over the water. That's adding this effect to the bottom half of my image, or bottom portion of my image. I want to apply this to these trees as well, but I want to remove it from the water here. So what I'm going to do is click color range, and we'll see if I can. Now I need to sample a better color. We'll go here, and that actually worked pretty well. As you can see, it is not, we'll hit O. It's not applying it to the water as much, and we'll just pull down on the range so that way it will exclude more of that water, maybe even further on the range. Because what's in black, the effect is not applied to. And then obviously what's in white, the effect is applying itself to. And we'll hit Shift X because I want this to be absolutely applied here. So we'll go all the way up and we'll just pull this. I'm not worried about the trees as much, but these little bushes we'll go ahead and paint in and make sure we get that. And it's okay if the effect goes a little bit onto the water. It'll just add some contrast. Hit O, and let's see what it looks like before and after. So very subtle, but it is more of a silhouette, which is what I wanted. Now we'll go ahead and start working with the sky. So there's a few different things that I could do here. Now that, the cool thing about editing old photos with new software is you get the best of, I guess, I don't know if it's best of both worlds, but you get to use the new technology on an old photo that didn't have the technology available to it at the time. So this is a sunset photo. I'm just going to go ahead and hit sunset and see what happens. And running into this issue right here, so that's probably not going to work. Let's see, maybe this sky will match up. It's matching up sort of. Might be able to pull down the horizon. Like, this is actually working quite well. The first time that I'm seeing Sky Swap AI work well in ON1 with at least with a photo of mine. So this actually works pretty good. It doesn't look as believable, but whatever. I'm gonna go with it. And I'll just turn off the lighting because, nah, I need that in the water. Maybe the reflection. Nah, we don't need a reflection. All right, let's see here. Let's hit Shift Edge maybe. Why do I feel like it's not doing anything? Nope, it's absolutely doing something. All right, it's fading it away. So we'll go like so. And let's see here. Shift horizon. Nope, we got to go the opposite direction. I'm trying to make this match up with the sun as much as possible, which I think that works well. Now, this is Sky Swap AI. This is a way of dealing with the sky. I'm not going to worry about that. We'll go ahead and turn that off and see what we can do with what was naturally in the image. I just wanted to play around with that. So the next thing, or the first thing that I like to do, is throw in a color enhancer. Now, the reason why I use the color enhancer whenever I'm dealing with skies like this is to mess around with saturation. I get access to my white balance or temperature slider, and then increase, decrease vibrance, right? Because I want to do this locally, and this is, to the best of my knowledge, the only adjustment that actually has this. So, just messing around with vibrance, I'll pull that up a tad, see what happens with saturation. I like that it's adding in all those extra colors to the sky. I'm not even looking down here, I'm only looking at the sky. And also, since the sun rays are affecting the water here, I'm looking at the water as well. So we're gonna pull up the color temperature. I think this is probably a good spot. All right. Let's turn that off and on. Yeah. So you see how it's just bringing some vibrant saturation to the sky overall. It's not perfect, right? This is a JPEG that is super old. I don't want to push it too far. But now, and honestly, I could probably leave this as it is. But if you had a foreground where you weren't silhouetting the foreground, as I did in this image, then what you're going to want to do is add in a mask, and you can get away with using the masking bug and using a linear bottom, and then just applying it to the top with a fairly harsh transition, because, you know, with this type of edit, it doesn't have to transition evenly. Now, I do want this edit down here in the water, so I'm going to grab the masking bug, or I'm sorry, the brush, the masking brush, make it a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to paint this over in the area that I think it belongs in, right here. Okay. And now I will go and hit add filter. And before I do that, let's copy this mask. Copy the mask. I don't think it copied because that was way too fast and I didn't even pay attention that it was moving that fast. So, but it's all good. So with the color adjustment, let me go back here. Color enhancer, copy this. Maybe it's not going to copy, and if it doesn't, then that's fine. Let's hit paste and see what, oh, wow, it did copy. That was the first time that it copied that fast for me. All right, so the thing that I'm gonna do is use the little picker tool, and I wanna adjust the hue, I guess. So we'll start there. And I'm just going to click and drag. So it's telling me that this is in the yellows which I already knew, but I was trying to make the edit a little bit faster. So I want to bring the hues more to the orange. We can saturate this, and then I want to affect more of those yellows and make them more of an orange, right? And then I want to go to orange, and I want to make the oranges more of a red. Like I'm really trying to bring a sunset vibe to this photo. Now, I don't like what it's doing to the water here. So I'm already on my masking brush. I am going to bring the opacity down to about 14, and I'm just going to paint. Oh, well, I want 14% of the adjustment, so I'm just going to take this away. Take it off of the water altogether, and we'll worry about that some other time. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is pull down on my reds again, just back to working with the sky. And I don't know, do I want them darker? I want them brighter. Maybe a little bit darker. And then we got saturation, pulling up the set. Now you're starting to see that transition that is right there. So with this adjustment, we may need to pull the transition down more, and this will help with adjusting that transition into the water. So always a good idea to just reassess those types of things. Now we'll hit the blue, and we will saturate the blues, push the blues more towards blue, increase that, and then we'll come back to yellow, and we'll make the yellows a little bit darker. And now we got the reds, and based off of how you want your photo to come out, you can push the reds almost in any direction to get the desired outcome. I'm going to go with more of an orange look, and I think maybe a little bit brighter. So turn this off and turn it back on, and I'm getting the look that I think I want out of this image. And a before to an after edit, I think it looks good. Now I'm just going to come back to develop, tone and color, and I think now looking at this, the overall exposure can come down, and I think that that looks good. Maybe even messing around with the midtones just a little bit. Wonder what happens with contrast. Just having some fun here. Bear with me. Yeah, I think this works. So before and after. That is the final edit. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit done. And then I will show you all three of the images that we worked on today. Once it takes me back to the album. All right, so we had that image, this one, and this one. And they're just pulling them all up. They're all in landscape orientation, which is kind of cool. But yeah, we did we did two landscape photos. Just one that was a larger scale landscape, and then a smaller, more intimate landscape. And then, of course, the portrait, which I really enjoy this photo. Lots of character of my kids, their personalities, who they were, the reason I picked up a camera in the first place, right? So these are just some of the techniques that you can use. I don't know if I showed anything that I haven't done before, but just to show you that you have an opportunity to really test what it is that you want to do with your photography. Don't feel like you only have to edit new photos because you don't. You can edit old photos. You can edit uh, photos that were taken with the less than stellar cameras and lenses and things of that sort. And in fact, that's going to help you with your photo editing journey, especially as you start to get lower resolution files and being able to use some of the newer technology that's inside of these photo editing software, regardless of if it's ON1 or whatever. It's always fun to just take old photos and throw it into the new software, see what you can get out of it. Hopefully, this video tutorial, this live stream, resonated with you. If it did, please smash the like button and leave me a comment if you're watching this on the restream, or if you're just watching this as a video that's playing in the background. Don't forget to head over to Free Will Photos to get your free account. You'll get some free downloads when you sign up. All you gotta do is go to your members area and go to the free download section. And there's a ton of things in there, and I'm working on some stuff to throw in there. So there will be more things added. Yeah, I think that's about it. So, what I want you guys to do is stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.